Does anyone actually remember Despicable Me 2? 1 year after the widely unexpected success of the original Despicable Me movie, Universal Pictures officially announced that a sequel would be released in the near future. People just couldn't get enough of these weird yellow beans. They're super weird. It's hilarious. Just trust me. Well, I actually watched Despicable Me 2 for the very first time recently, and turns out it might be way deeper than most people think. It's got a lot of similarities to the first movie. It's still very goofy. It's still very weird. But if you look slightly below the surface, turns out the sequel is also very complex, choosing to tell an emotional story centered around rejection and childhood trauma and even literal war crimes. I'm not kidding, these minions are actually insane. In a recent poll I made, most people seem to agree that the first movie is the best one. However, I did get some comments stating that the sequel is actually better. So today, I'll be watching Despicable Me 2 in full to see if it's a secret hidden gem or just another pack of mindless slop. I'll be explaining in depth what happens in this movie while also giving my own opinion here and there. So grab your copy of Mario Party for the Nintendo DS and let's jump into a sequel that's often misunderstood, the one, the only, Despicable Me 2. But wait, what's this? Gru is getting a video call from today's sponsor. Huge shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. With summer rolling in, it's the perfect time to explore your passions and hobbies with Skillshare. What I think is really exciting about Skillshare is how it empowers you to learn at your own pace with stackable lessons and thousands of creative classes in countless categories ranging from beginner to advanced. Seriously, there's a bunch of these, you can pick what you want. Learning is actually part of my bucket list this summer since I'm excited to dive into this cinematography class I found, since you guys know I love movies and I've always wanted to be able to film with my own camera and make it actually look cool. And guess what? The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. So if you're ready to take your skills to the next level and make this summer your most creative one yet, click the link in the description and start your 1-month free trial with Skillshare. Once again, massive thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video and providing people with the opportunity to explore their creative side. Let's continue to learn, grow, and create together. Our adventure begins with two Russians playing cards at a top secret laboratory in the Arctic somewhere. There's gambling, there's guns. These are the two most Russian dudes I think I've ever seen. The game is cut short, however, because a giant magnet appears in the sky and steals all the equipment used at this facility. I'm not gonna lie to you, half the people here probably end up dying, but since this is just a goofy kids movie, you know we gotta put a toilet joke in there somewhere. Of course there is. He looks like Dr. Neocortex from Crash Bandicoot. This is when we cut to our main man, Gru. If you haven't watched my video on the first movie yet, watch that first. It's a banger. But if you have watched it, you know that Gru isn't just super duper evil, but he's also a super duper dad now. You see, turns out today is Agnes's birthday. Everyone say happy birthday to Agnes. She deserves it. She's the best. This movie seems to pick up right where the last one left off, because in this one, Gru is extremely caring and protective of all three of his girls. He threw this big birthday party for Agnes. Everyone's having fun. Even the minions are here, which is nice. And what better way to introduce them than to have them commit literal gang violence within the first 10 seconds of their appearance. Like I said, Gru is trying to make this party perfect, and part of that involves him dressing up as a fairy princess to put on a show for all the kids. Don't be confused, this moment is actually really heartfelt, but it's also kinda cursed. This reminds me of every single Discord PFP in the official Genshin Impact server. Anyway, we skip a little later in the day now, and Gru is making his dog pee on the neighbor's flowers, proving that Gru still has that supervillain dog in him. Damn, I need a dog like that, dude. The weeds in my yard are getting out of hand. But then, the peeing is cut short when a character named Lucy appears. Gru thinks she's a threat, so they have a quick 1v1. Sadly though, Lucy does get the better of him since she has some sort of lipstick taser thing, and it's just super OP. Just trust me. Okay, you'll see. This thing is overpowered. Gru is now passed out and not waking up anytime soon, so I'm not kidding. Lucy straight up just stuffs him in a trunk and kidnaps him. Two random minions also get involved out of nowhere, but since minions are usually pretty stupid, they don't do much. They just kind of exist. The kidnapping ends up in the water and enters some kind of submarine, which is when we find out that Lucy actually brought Gru to the headquarters of the Anti-Villain League. This is basically just a group of good guys who try to beat up the bad guys. Very complex so far. I know. Basically, the League wants Gru's help for a new case because as an ex-villain, he has a lot of value. And also, everyone just sees him as a good guy now since he returned the moon in the first movie, which, like, I'm gonna be honest, he never actually did return the moon. Okay, the moon just got bigger and I guess flew right back into space on its own. But you know, no one really knows about that part. Now do they? This guy's name is Silas Ramsbottom. He's in charge of everything around here. I won't be talking about him too much since he's honestly not that important, but he does deserve a mention for that last name alone. Ramsbottom? Seriously? Should have just called him like Smash Butt or, you know, thrust cheeks or something. The case they need Gru's help with has to do with the stolen laboratory at the start of the movie. They explain that this place was devoted to conducting experiments using some kind of special serum that, for a lack of a better term, just makes things go f***ing insane. Oh no. Holy, that looks like a Clash of Clans enemy or something. Anyway, so Gru has to find out who has the serum, because obviously injecting people with some sort of bioweapon probably isn't a good thing. I'm looking at you, Elon Musk.
Original gangster.
Lucky for Gru, however, the anti-villain league has narrowed the search down to one of the shop owners in the local mall. How convenient. To everyone's surprise, Gru actually declines the work since he's happy just being a father now. And also, turns out he's invested all of his money into creating his very own line of jams and jellies. This kind of comes out of completely nowhere, and I'm not kidding, is a useless fact they bring up multiple times throughout the movie. You'll see, just wait. Anyway, before Gru leaves, Lucy gives him her card. That way he can call if he changes his mind. I'd also like to mention that it's nighttime now, which means Gru most likely left the girls home alone for hours with no one but the minions to watch over them. Don't worry, they're extremely safe. Later that night when he's back home, Gru is talking to the girls before bed when the topic of dating comes up. This is when Gru gets a sudden flashback from his childhood. It's this moment where he asked a girl out but got rejected in front of everyone. I can easily make fun of this scene since Gru just looks kind of goofy, to be honest. But it's also kind of sad because it further proves that Gru was just an outcast growing up. Anyway, the past is the past, so Gru doesn't focus too much on it. It's clear here that Gru's focus is mainly his girls and that he cherishes all their time together. As a new father, he wants to give the girls what he was never given. That being attention and care, which you'd think would be like the two most basic necessities for a child growing up, but that's sadly not always the case. And people wonder why kids are addicted to Skibbity Toilet. That's literally their father figure. That's who's raising them. Goddamn. Anyway, Gru enters his secret lair, which is filled with minions, as usual. But this time around, everyone seems to be working and perfecting this special jelly formula. Again, don't expect a great payoff to the side plot. You will be underwhelmed. One minion falls in a giant batch of this stuff and contaminates all of it, but no one really cares because, I don't know, minions are just insane, dude. Gru and some minions eventually try this new formula, and turns out literally everyone hates it. If you gave this to a newborn baby, it would probably be considered torture. It's that bad. But this is when the movie gets a little sad. You see, Dr. Nefario, who's basically Gru's sidekick, says that he misses doing evil work, so he's decided to get another job. The jelly life just isn't for him, and sometimes it takes 700 hours of Animal Crossing to figure that out. So with that, Dr. Nefario straight up quits, and we get the proper send-off he deserves with some extremely loud fart sounds that were probably taken from Adobe's sound effect library.
Fart gun salute!
Why is that so loud? My ears! What the hell? Dr. Nefario makes his official exit at an extremely slow speed, once again proving that he probably plays Mario Kart on 50cc. While this is happening, important to mention that a random minion upstairs just straight up gets abducted. What could anyone possibly want with a brainless yellow marshmallow that can barely communicate? I don't know, maybe they need a punching bag or something? I honestly have no idea. The next day now, and the girls are up to some shenanigans. You see, they all really want to have a mom, and they can tell Gru is a little lonely at times, so they decide to make Gru an online dating profile. They use a website called createadate.net, which when you visit the URL yourself, just doesn't exist anymore. So chances are this is probably just some phishing site that the girls use to get scammed. They probably just downloaded like 13 viruses on the family laptop. Well done. However, this scene is when we get some of the most iconic Gru pictures of all time. Seriously, some of these are hilarious, and actually in the movie, they're great. Gru finds out about what's going on really quickly, and again, gets immediately awkward because he's never texted a woman a day in his life, probably. But that whole scene was just for the memes, because now is when Gru is going to the mall where all the suspects are located. Gru took the job in helping the anti-villain league, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that. He's doing it. He enters this cupcake shop, which acts as a cover, since this whole mission is meant to be like an undercover type thing. It's also a two-person type thing, apparently, because Lucy, the girl from earlier, is actually joining Gru on this mission. The league randomly paired these two up together. Surely their relationship will be strictly professional for the remainder of this movie. A little more info about Lucy now. Despite what you might initially think, she's described as a goofy, enthusiastic, and cheerful person. She's kind of dumb sometimes, but also always ends up getting the job done. Think someone like Deadpool if he was only allowed to make PG jokes. And also, she dances like a Fortnite character. There's also this moment where one of the minions daydreams about kissing Lucy, which is kind of weird considering the minions are apparently 2 to 4 billion years old. I'll explain that later. It gets pretty weird. This random guy walks in out of nowhere. He's one of the other shop owners in the mall. He's very big and stands out a lot. I wonder if he'll be important at all. After introducing himself, he leaves, and Gru immediately says that he recognizes him as an evil villain called El Macho. Back in the day, El Macho was one of the toughest guys out there until he supposedly died while air surfing on a shark while 250 pounds of dynamite was strapped to his chest and blew up as he entered a hole in an erupting volcano. What is this? ChatGPT? How do you even think of something like that?
Sounds like El Macho's pretty
dead?
Yeah.
They never found the body.
They probably wouldn't find a body if it was true. Like, dude blew up in a volcano. Later that night, and Gru is helping Agnes rehearse some lines for some sort of Mother's Day show, whatever that means. This is obviously just a setup for Agnes to get really sad about not having a mother again. Gru is very lonely, and the girls just want a mom. Whatever will they do? I'm about to cry. A bit after, and the minions are having some huge party, because what else is there to do if you're trapped in the basement all day? Which is when Gru calls two of them by name to follow him upstairs. I'm not sure how Gru can tell who's who, if I'm being honest. Sure, some of the minions look a little different, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of minions that look the exact same. This is when two completely different minions who are outside get abducted as well out of nowhere, never to be seen again. And now you might be thinking that this movie isn't anything too crazy yet. It just seems like your average cartoon for now, but I swear, okay, things get crazy later, and the lore behind it is actually insane. So now Gru magically TPs to the mall with Lucy, which is when they break into El Macho's shop to find some clues. Speeding through this, they don't actually find anything and just end up having to run away with the help of some minions, but not before hitting El Macho with a car at 80 miles per hour.
Excuse me, what the actual
The next day, and there's this ice cream truck nearby, so naturally all the minions trample over some kids and try to buy some ice cream. Sadly though, this is straight up just another kidnapping, this time in broad daylight. This is getting a little creepy now. There's a lot of minions missing, and like an ice cream truck abduction is a little wild, I won't lie. Back to Gru and Lucy, and they're investigating another shop in the mall, since El Macho's place didn't have anything of note, really. But before they do, turns out the girls are actually here and get to meet Lucy for the very first time. They're all pretty excited, since I guess she's a potential mother to them or something. We get this one line from Agnes, which I'm pretty sure is inspired by every Valorant player when they have a girl on their team.
Are you single?
During these brief moments, Lucy notices just how much of a caring person Gru actually is, at least when it comes to his girls. But now it's time to focus on the mission, so Gru goes undercover into another shop, which is when we find out that Gru actually has a horribly uncurable disease. Turns out Gru is bald. Disgusting. I know.
You are bald. And that is bad.
The shop he enters is some sort of wig shop, I think. The dude who owns it is obsessed with hair. He's got a bald eagle next to him, which is ironic. Gru looks around the shop for clues and actually ends up almost finding something. But then, two of the three girls show up and let Gru know that Margot is actually on a date with a boy. I guess earlier the girls were hanging out and some random guy came up to Margot and asked her out or something. That's her name, by the way. She's named Margot. I don't think I mentioned that one time in the first video. Because of this news, Gru activates his overprotective dad mode immediately and leaves the shop to find Margot. Eventually, he does find her in where else but El Macho's shop, which is actually a restaurant, turns out. Not only that, but the boy who's talking to Margot is actually El Macho's son. So there's some more conflict for you.
My dream is to one day play video games for a living.
Bro just wants to play RuneScape or something. I respect it. Anyway, turns out El Macho's family is having a big Cinco de Mayo party soon, and so Gru and his family are all invited to show up and wear like a guacamole hat or something. I don't know, I've never been to one. Also, I want to point out a little clever moment in the writing real quick. I was going to mention how the use of Cinco de Mayo and Mother's Day contradict each other in this story, since if the dates don't line up, it wouldn't make any sense. It was going to be a good gotcha moment where I seem really smart, but as fate would have it, the 2 days are actually very close to each other, so it makes perfect sense for them to both be mentioned. GG Illumination, you win this time. Gru is back home now, and I should let you know there's this reoccurring bit that I haven't mentioned yet. Essentially, this one girl that Gru knows has been trying to hook him up with one of her friends. Gru has been uninterested up until this point, but for some reason, at this point in the movie, he caves and goes on a date with this random girl. Later that night, he's on the date back at the mall. There's a lot of time skips in this movie, and they just keep going back and forth between the mall and the house. It's pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, the date goes about as good as you'd expect, which is to say, not at all. Lucy randomly shows up and ends up shooting Gru's date with a sleep dart. She must be a Bloons Tower Defense pro or something. This leads Gru to ditching his date and hanging out with Lucy for the night. The two share some moments of vulnerability with one another. It gets kind of deep and it's honestly kind of cute. And then the night ends with Lucy giving Gru a little kiss on the cheek. How adorable. We then get a montage of Gru being the happiest man alive since he finally found a woman who seems to be interested in him. It's like he unboxed 2 knives in a row on CS2. He's in a super good mood now. But the happiness is cut short, however, because going back to the mall now, and turns out the anti-villain league found some serum in the hair guy's shop. So the mission now is technically complete, which means Lucy will be getting transferred to Australia. There's really no reason for her to specifically be transferred to Australia other than like it's really far away. So once again, El Bozo plus no women plus never happy plus big nose. Gru does get to talk to Lucy before she leaves, which is pretty awkward, I won't lie. They both fail to say how they really feel towards one another. In a final act of appreciation, Lucy gives Gru her lipstick taser, which is the thing she used on him at the very beginning of the movie.
Bye, Gru.
Bro, if they kissed, wouldn't Gru's nose just like poke her in the eye or something? So now Gru is pretty sad because he just lost the love of his life that he just met like 1 week ago or something. It's very similar to how he felt towards the girls in the first movie. Gru has to overcome his childhood fear so he can properly accomplish what he desperately desires, that being an intimate relationship in this case. This is when we skip to the minions now. Turns out after all the kidnappings, they've been brought to this tropical resort thing, I guess. Some are tanning, some are enjoying some music, and some are choosing to get naked. For some reason, it's just you and the boys. Who cares? While relaxing, one of them gets sucked into the water because this isn't an actual tropical island, but some sort of simulation inside of a giant bubble. We end up seeing 2 minions tied up to a chair and being injected with the serum from the beginning, turning them into these weird purple monsters. So now, instead of being dumb and yellow, they're aggressive and purple. It's like they put all their stats into anger or something. We'll get back to that later though, because it's now time for the Gru family to attend the Cinco de Mayo party. It's all fun and games until El Macho's son tries to rizz up Margot. Gru doesn't really like this, but like every Reddit user who has uncontrollable acne, he just can't stop it from happening. There's this quick dance sequence and then Gru's all sad and alone at the table. He also straight up has a guacamole hat. Let me know if this is a real thing. It feels very impractical. This is when Gru decides to follow El Macho into a secret room since he still believes El Macho to be the main bad guy despite not finding any proof earlier. I'm not going to drag this out. Gru was 100% right in his assumption. El Macho was up to everything. He framed the hair guy from earlier. Case closed. Gru has a massive brain. You'd think here that El Macho is a little more hostile than he is, but turns out that he actually asks Gru to join him on his evil plan. You see, El Macho kind of admires Gru a little bit, and this is when we get the big reveal, and when I'm finally going to try to explain what's really going on here. El Macho shows off that he's been kidnapping the minions and injecting them with some serum so they become these indestructible evil zombies, essentially. He shows off how he's got hundreds, maybe even thousands of them in cages, ready to go. This honestly kind of makes no sense, since he also shows one of them eating a literal police car, so like they could definitely just break free from these cages if they wanted to. Those bars aren't doing anything, I'm gonna be honest. But you might be asking to yourself why he wanted the minions to begin with. Like, sure, there's a million of them, but why the minions specifically? All right. Here we go. A big question I had in my first video was asking what the minions even are. They're obviously not human, so what could they possibly be? Well, although I don't know the exact answer, from my understanding, they're these weird yellow critters that spawned in randomly a long time ago. As far as I know, their main purpose throughout history has been to find the most evil person on the planet and serve them throughout their journey. This is why El Macho wants them and why they're with Gru right now. But this is also why there's a widely accepted theory that the minions are just f***ing insane. You see, if they always seek out the most evil person in the world, that means at one point in time, and bear with me, they probably serve people like fascist dictators and evil terrorists. I know this is obviously just a little internet haha, but if you choose to believe it because it actually is backed up by the official lore, it means that most of the minions have probably committed multiple war crimes. They definitely do actual bad things in these movies, like instinctively beat each other and have no care for anyone's safety. And listen, at the end of the day, you can believe what you want, okay? It's just a movie. I just think it's funny that every child wearing a minion shirt is just secretly supporting some sort of terrorist organization. Like, isn't that a real world plot twist? Minions are actually like a hate symbol or something. Anyway, after the big reveal, Gru basically says, no, I don't want to join you, and then leaves. During this, Margot is also really sad because El Macho's son is dancing with another girl now, so that plotline kind of went nowhere at all. After they leave the party, who else but Lucy shows up. Turns out on her way to Australia, Lucy realized that she had feelings for Gru, so I'm not kidding, she decided to jump out of the plane mid-flight. Also, during her realization, there's this funny scene where she starts seeing Gru's face everywhere. It got a good chuckle out of me, I won't lie.
Just did a boom boom.
Yeah, that would be pretty annoying on a plane, I think. She has no idea about what just happened with all the minions and stuff, so she gets lured into a trap later that day, and Dr. Nefario actually calls Gru, further warning him about what's gonna happen and about what happened to Lucy. Turns out Nefario was working with El Macho this whole time, by the way, but he like regrets it now because he's a bad guy, but not really that bad. So also, Dr. Nefario calling here kind of makes no sense because then Gru leaves to go save Lucy, but at the same time, Dr. Nefario shows up in Gru's basement to save the girls from some purple minion or something. Like, why call him if you were gonna show up at the house 2 minutes later? That's kind of weird. Whatever. Gru goes back to El Macho's house, which is when things go really badly and he's about to die. But then Dr. Nefario, the minions, and the girls all show up to save the day. I guess Dr. Nefario just has an antidote that'll change all the minions back to normal. By the way, the big jelly payoff of this movie that I mentioned is that Dr. Nefario mixed the antidote with the large amount of jelly that Gru had made at the very beginning of the movie. This part kind of tricks you into thinking the whole jelly thing had a purpose, but if I'm being honest, you could have just definitely mixed the antidote with like water or something, or just just like deliver it raw. Not sure why it has to be mixed with anything at all. It just seems kind of random, if I'm being honest. Anyway, it's super epic. The girls and everyone else turn the minions back to level 1. We get one final standoff between Gru and El Macho, which is when we not only see Lucy, who's attached to a shark covered in explosives, referencing that one El Macho story back at the beginning, but we also see El Macho himself take some of the purple serum, so he turns into some giant beast thing. That's a pretty ballsy move, to be honest. Not sure he thought this one through. Anyway, you might be thinking this is going to be some crazy fight scene, but instead, Gru remembers he was given the most OP item in any movie ever. Remember? I told you guys that. He uses the lipstick taser on him, and El Macho immediately dies or something, and the day is saved. There's this bit at the end where Lucy and Gru are actually about to die in a volcano, but they just jump in the water and everything is fine. Then, 147 dates later, which is like probably 2 years or something, Gru and Lucy get married, so now Gru is very happy, and so are the girls. Oh, are they gonna have trouble kissing? Oh, see? I said it. I said, he poked her in the eye! I called it. There's also this weird bit where Agnes says the speech she was practicing earlier in the movie for Mother's Day. We established that a good amount of time has passed since then, so did Agnes remember this random speech from school for over like 2 years or something? I don't know, it's cute regardless, I guess. And that was the movie, Despicable Me 2. Is it that bad? Honestly, with the amount of slander I saw in the comment section, I thought it'd be worse. I definitely don't think it was as good as the first movie, but it's still not really even that bad. The ending is kind of weird because the whole movie, these girls really want a mother, and instead of learning from that impulse, they just add Lucy in the mix and are like, yep, you guys have a mom now. Like there could have been a message about learning to appreciate what you have as opposed to always wanting more or something. But again, it's still not really that bad. Learning that the minions are basically the most evil living beings on the planet and destined to be enslaved forever is pretty wild, but I guess that's just part of the fun. All in all, good movie. Would recommend. If you have an extra dollar, consider becoming a member. It helps the channel and gives you access to exclusive member content, which I actually haven't started yet, but will start sometime soon. Thank you to all my current members. You guys are the best. I appreciate you all so much. Paula Abdul scores this one a solid 10,000 war crimes out of 5. And yeah, thanks for watching.
My dream is to one day
Did a boom boom.